Um, this video has been a long time coming. I'm hoping that you prepared by watching the movie Wicked. Very important movie. Lots and lots of stuff in this movie that comes straight from the Word. For those who don't know me, my name is Shannon. Last name Nace for Nace's Place. And in this video, I'm going to go over the movie Wicked. And just like I said in all of my other videos, I'm going back and forth comparing people to Adam and Eve, especially in this one. I'll mention Jacob and Israel too, and several other things, but we're going to get right into it. I would like to make this as quick as possible. I've gone over this most of the day today so I could be fast on my feet with it. So in the movie, I'm first going to go over characters, what their name possibly means, and we'll go from there. So Elphaba is the main character in this movie. She's playing the Green Witch. And green, if you don't remember from one of my other videos, means immortality spiritually. It's a healing heart, and I'm looking at my notes. So when I look down, I'm reading from my notes. I'm going to try to look up and down so that we can, there's not much space there in between and the silence, but while I'm watching, please forgive me and let me have time so I can get back to it. Green means a healing heart, growth, renewal, and unconditional love. Elphaba is a social outcast, and hidden in her name is the Hebrew word Abba, which means father. So can we guess what part the Green Witch is playing? She's actually playing the part of Hava, the part of Jesus, Yeshua, salvation and redemption. She's the one that walks in love. She's the one that's spiritual, not physical. Glinda, she's considered the good witch. And of course, from my title, this is calling evil good and good evil. So we're going to see the differences, and we're going to go back to the garden, and we're going to compare things so that we can understand maybe that this movie is really God speaking to us through his creation once again, telling us the same things a different way. Glinda, she's popular, mostly concerned with looking good to the eyes. Remember that Adam said it looked good to the eyes and then for food, and Elphaba's the opposite. It looked good for food and then to the eyes. Eyes is physical, and the food is referring to when Yeshua said, my food is to do the will of the Father. Now, if you go to John 10:17, it tells you what the will of the Father is, because Jesus says, my Father loves me because I lay my life down so that I can pick it back up again. Now, if he loves him because he's laying his life down so that he can pick it back up again, he's loving him because he loved, because that's the definition of love. So, she does good when people are watching to appear good. I already went over Elphaba again. Glinda starts with a backwards hey in her name. This is for my Jewish people. The hey meaning behold. It's the same letter that was added to Abraham and Sarah's name. But she later takes it out of her name. So hers is a backward name. She's explaining that her name is said Linda. Instead of the ha, it's the backwards. Later she takes it out. And again, she takes it out to appear to look good, to win people over, which is, that's in our society today. There's a lot of people that are doing things to appear to look good. They're more concerned with how they look rather than who they really are. And that's what we're, that's Adam and Eve. Prince Flyero, I don't know how to say his name, but in his second name, Flyero, basically it also means to fly. And we're going to see that the witch flies and the monkeys fly with wings, that she speaks a spell and they gain wings. Now, spoiler alert, I'm going over this movie not necessarily in the order that it's presented. But if you haven't seen it and you don't want me to ruin it, don't watch my video before you watch the movie. Prince Flyero, he's a prince and he has no problem admitting that he's a misfit. He confesses his sins one to another, which we're commanded to do. He does engage in breaking rules and causing disruptions, but his heart is good. He is a Hava, or a Jacob / Israel. Hava, when she eats, she is consummating with flesh. She becomes one with flesh, but not in the same way that Adam is presenting the fleshly nature. There's two kinds of flesh in the garden. There's the flesh that breaks the rules, yet keeps the highest. And then there are those who consume and devour, breaking the number one rule, and that is to love neighbor and maker, and to remember that God is the one that led you out of the land of Egypt by the hand, physical, meaning that if we acknowledge that we aren't doing anything, that it's the God in us allowing us and helping us to walk straight, then we don't have a right to look at others when they're not walking the way, or when they're breaking rules, and point fingers and persecute them for transgressions, because you have only walked your way and learned the right way to do it because of God and what He's doing in your life. It's not because of you, the flesh. And that's us, not just you. I always include myself in that. Nobody is higher than anybody. I'm just the messenger here. And so Nessa Rose is the Green Witch's younger sister. And she's in a wheelchair because her legs don't work, symbolic of not walking the way. Now, she's in a wheelchair due to her father feeding her mother too many milk flowers. Now, that took my mind to the milk and the meat of the word, okay? The milk is the rules and the regulations, which give us a knowledge of good and evil. We raise our children up teaching them rules. But before they're grown, we need to give them a little meat, which is the grace of the word, so that when we're applying the rules, we apply them in the right order, and we remember that the number one rule is the parentheses. We do it first, and then we go back and do all the others. If we do the others first, 9 times out of 10, we're going to be breaking the first rule. Okay, so too much milk. Where was I? Too much milk and developing without enough meat. The meat being the grace of the book and the proper order of the rules. And I'm going to get into that more later. I'm going to go over that scenario later because it's going to come up again. The character Bach. He's interested in Glinda, but he's told by Glinda to pursue Nessa Rose, the younger sister, in order to impress her. But she was really not interested in him. She's interested in the prince, and she's trying to look good for the prince by telling Bach to go for Nessa Rose. Now, Bach, his name means side, as in side of a human. So where does that take your mind to? Hava was from the side of Adam. So Bach is playing the part of Hava. He's the spiritual. He's attracted to Glinda, who is the physical. She's all about looking good. She sends him over to Nessa Rose, who basically is of the physical as well. And she's the opposite of her sister. The sister's the older, and the older shall serve the younger. And she's the one that's taking the blame for her. She's the one that's taking care of her and serving her through the movie. Now, the order of them is in the reverse, but let's just talk about at the beginning of the movie how Elphaba comes up, how she is conceived. Her father leaves to go on the road to do something. Well, her mother's husband. And another man comes in and fathers her. He gives the mother a vase with green liquid in it. She drinks a bunch of it, which is what causes Elphaba to come out green. Now, the father, they later say, and You can read in Google who some of the characters become, because this is before the Wizard of Oz. So a lot of these people become characters in the Wizard of Oz. But I read a little bit of who is who, and Elphaba's father is actually the Wizard of Oz, and he's the one that gives the green vial to her mother to drink before she's conceived. So she is basically, she's the child that doesn't belong to her mother's husband. So when Nessa Rose is born, the father doesn't want his child to come out looking green like Elphaba, so he gives a bunch of milk flowers to the mother, milk of the word. Now let's talk about that. Eve was the first daughter born in the garden, and she came out of Adam. And so, her father, basically Adam, represents the serpent spirit. And so the next one to be born, and basically she's the firstborn, because the spirit came first and then the flesh. On earth it's in the opposite, Adam and then Eve. But from heaven it's the opposite, the spirit comes first then the flesh. So who is given the milk flowers? Adam. He's the secondborn, and she is the one that's serving him. She's really the older. On earth she's the younger, and that's why the secondborn gets the inheritance. So let me move on to the next character, Madame Morrible, and she is the sorcerer teacher. I believe she was playing the part of the serpent. She pairs up with the wizard that fathers Elphaba. She's a picture of the spirit working in the flesh. She teaches sorcery, and she's looking for a student with real power. The children of God are the only ones with the real power. The only way that those who are not the children of God, the only way they can have power is if we give it to them. And so how better to get us to give it to them than to deceive us into giving them the power, which is exactly what happened in the garden with Adam and Eve. Eve was deceived, and she handed the power over to Adam, and I'm going to go over that in a minute as to how she did that. And it's all scriptural. I'm not making this up. It's in your Old and New Testament. I'm using both to explain. The sorcerer is looking for the one who can read their book to cast a spell and retrieve the power, like Satan in the garden with Eve. She seeks Elphaba, or she sees that Elphaba may have that power, and makes her feel special and wanted to gain her trust, which is what happened with Eve in the garden. That's what the serpent did with her. So let's skip over. Well, I do want to talk about how. Well, no, I'll talk about it at the end. I'll talk about it when we go over when Elphaba's talked into reading the book. I'll talk about how it coincides with what Eve did and how she handed the power to Adam. Eve being the spirit, Adam being the flesh. This is not about men and women. There are both men and women that speak as Hava. There are both men and women that speak like Adam. When I first started explaining this, I explained it as man and woman. It didn't go over well, but that's not what was meant here. I had to keep looking to see how I could better explain it where it would be received better. But all in all, the stereotypes here of Adam is man and Eve is woman. That was God's stereotype, because there are more women like Hava and more men like Eve. More women like Hava and more men like Adam. So that was God's stereotype. So let's move forward, and we'll go back to that in just a little bit. There's two kinds of animals in this movie. There's the animals like the teacher, the goat. There are the other animals that are servants, like the bear that raises Elphaba and loves her as is, even though she's green and she upset her parents. These animals in this movie represent the animalistic nature of Adam and Eve. There's two kinds. The other kind of animal are the monkeys that grow wings to go out and be spies in the land, to spy out and see who they can find doing wrong. This is what Adam did. It was this woman you gave me. He's pointing out who's doing wrong and not worried about himself. So those are the two types of animals. Now remember, in some of my other explanations of the garden, I explained that animal sacrifice in the garden was not actually a literal animal. The animal sacrifice was the animalistic nature that Eve was born with, but controlled and sacrificed through her words. But it was God speaking through her, because she's speaking just as the Father. I and the Father are one. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. It is referring to the spirit within the person. It's not referring to the human part of us. It's referring to the essence. And yes, Yeshua is the one that said that in the New Testament. Well, it's the same in the garden. The Father was speaking through Hava when she, instead of blaming Adam and God, she covered Adam and God, and she exposed the enemy hiding in Adam, the spirit that was hiding in Adam, the accuser, and herself, by saying, I did it. You can't be deceived unless you first believe. So that was the animal sacrifice, and that animal that she sacrificed is the same animal being portrayed in this movie as the monkeys with the wings, going out to spy out the land and to point out wrongdoing. That's different than the other animals. They break the rules, but they believe in the good of all, just like Eve. That was the animalistic nature that she was one with, breaking the rules. She kept the highest, she kept the parentheses, but she broke a lesser rule in order to keep the highest. Because if you eat, you die. Yeshua taught, choose death in order to give and have life. And in her choosing choosing to eat, a call to consummate, she's choosing to become one with flesh so that she can give life to flesh and live life in flesh. So she is actually doing the word. Now, if you're from my Jewish side, you may not know that. It's in the New Testament. That's why it's very important for you to know it. Because the actual Sod level, the fourth level of understanding of the Tanakh, it is the New Testament. That is what I've been showing through all of my videos. Now, it's not exactly explained the same way that a typical Christian would explain it, because in the translation and the studying and all the different teachers that came about through centuries, some of the true meaning of things has gotten lost, which is what I'm trying to show here as I go through these videos and show examples in these movies. That's what I chose to do it for, to show the examples of what's written in something that everybody can understand. So the monkeys are with the wings, which Elphaba in reading the word gave to them. Now I'm going to explain this to you instead of waiting till the end. Hava was the second witness in the garden. In her accepting the blame, because there has to be two witnesses in order to find you guilty. This is in the Old Testament. When she says, yes, I did it, I believed, it was my fault, she's offering herself up as a guilt offering. She had to in order to honor the first commandment. Had she not, then she wouldn't have been operating in love either. So she's tricked into taking the blame. She wouldn't have had to do that had Adam not pointed his finger at her in the first place. So she's being tricked. It's sorcery in order to give over the kingdom to Adam, because when she finds herself guilty, then who becomes innocent? She's clean, and she becomes unclean to make Adam clean. And this is when his way of doing things is seen as righteous. And what is he? He represents the physical, the way things look. It looked good to the eyes and then for food. So remember, the enemy comes in and makes his light look as bright and as much light as the true light. And that's what's going on here. And we often as a people have been conditioned to look at people and what they say and what they do and judge whether they're righteous by the physical. But this is not what the word says makes you righteous. And I'm trying to bring that out as many times and chances as I can get. So I'm hoping with this movie that it's brought out a whole lot more so that you can actually really see, because once this is seen, it can't be unseen. It's just in your face. So Elphaba is tricked into reading the book, and she's the one that once she reads the book, and of course, when you know the word and you are doing it the way the word says, and you're laying it down, what is she doing? When she casts the spell on the monkeys and they grow wings, they are now considered clean. They're the ones flying high. They're considered righteous and therefore able to point out what other people are doing. That is a false sense of righteousness. That's not righteous at all. We are not supposed to persecute others for transgressions. And oftentimes, when someone's pointing a finger at someone, they've actually done the same thing, just maybe a different way. So, in the movie, she's tricked into giving the kingdom over to the wizard and his sorcerer, the sorcerer teacher, Madame. And then they turn it and blame it on the Green Witch, on Elphaba, and make her look guilty. How many centuries, how many thousands of years has Eve been being pointed at and blamed for being tricked into giving the kingdom over to flesh? The spirit was tricked into giving the kingdom to flesh. And it's not even that it's a trick. That's just the way it was going to be. Because flesh does have more power than the spirit. The spirit is a quiet, gentle spirit. And until the flesh learns lessons, which is why we should allow people to make choices and make mistakes and stop persecuting others for transgressions, until those mistakes are made, the flesh is not going to give in to the spirit. That's what it means to get older and wiser. Some of us are born wise. Some of us take many years to get wise through many mistakes. And so we don't need each other to make this thing called life any more difficult than it is. Once we enter a physical body, we've been cut off from the whole truth, and we have to figure it out. We've been put in a set circumstance with a set culture, set parents, set circumstances that sometimes are good and sometimes aren't. So we need to cut each other a break here. So that is what is going on with her reading the book of wisdom, which they call it something different, but I equate it to the Bible. And the only one that's going to be able to not only read the book, but interpret the book correctly is the one who has the Spirit within them. Those who do not have the Spirit are interpreting from the physical, and that is why everybody thought that the animal sacrifice was a literal animal. It was not. This is about humans, not animals. Now, you can accept that or not. I know that's going to touch a lot of people the wrong way. I'm just here to deliver the message, and I'm sorry if it's hitting you the wrong way, but the truth is the truth, and the word says the truth is eventually going to be pointed out. And fortunately or unfortunately, I was chosen to do that, and I'm going to do it whether it pisses people off or not. Now, some of the things that I discuss are my opinion. You don't have to go with my opinion. Opinions are not factual. They're just opinions. But other things, when I show you scripture to back that up, it's factual. So you be the discerner. Some of you watching are going to have the Spirit of God and totally understand what I'm saying. And some that are watching do not. Or you're still in the process of getting all the way there. We're all eventually going to get there, just not necessarily at the same time. It's going to go worse for those that are further behind than it is for those that are ahead of time. So I'm not here to say what you are or not. That is for you and you only to decide. I'm presenting information and that's it. Okay, let me look here for a minute and see if I've covered all of this. I talked about Elphaba being tricked. Okay, those wings are giving the monkeys a false sense of defying gravity. Let me talk about that because that's the last song in the movie, Defying Gravity. And it's the same meaning as the song in Aladdin, A Whole New World, where they're in a flying carpet up in the air. This is talking about being in the air, spiritual, rather than being on the ground or the dirt, the dust, atom, physical. So to defy gravity, what does gravity do? It pulls you to the earth. So if you defy gravity, then you're defying your animalistic nature to want to consume and devour your neighbor and maker. But the monkeys were given a false sense of defying gravity. They're not really defying gravity. They're only made to look righteous. But now, how do we really defy gravity? The broomstick that the other witch, that Elphaba made for herself. She reads the book again at the end. She comes up with the broom. Now, the broom can represent the staff. It means to purify or purification. It also, what does a broom do? It brushes away the dust. So again, the animalistic nature, it gets rid of that. So this is what is causing her to defy gravity. It is the true defying of gravity, because you only have that broomstick if you're doing it the right way, the way that she's doing it, in love. She defends the animals. She's like the David that's defending the lambs from the wolves. And that's what she's doing through the whole movie. Against who? The other witch. The witch that's being seen as good. And so that's the two kinds of defying gravity. You've got the false sense of defying. That's those who look the part, but they're pointing fingers, looking for people that are doing wrong. You'll have jobs that send people out looking for something that they can get you on to get rid of you, write you up, or whatever. I mean, come on. This is happening in the government. It's happening in every job. I mean, this is everywhere. This stuff in this movie, it's happening all over the place. This movie is just describing it in a very creative, entertaining way, which is why I'm showing you, as a seer, what I see biblically in this movie. It's important because God is giving us his story again and again and again. And I loved this one because I'll tell you that I didn't want to watch it at first because of some of the negative feedback. And I thought, no, God has a story in there. You need to watch it and see if you can see it. And of course, I saw all kinds of stuff right away. It just hit me in the face like a ton of bricks. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to look at it. Let's talk about some of the movie critics tried to say that Elphaba, the two witches, were gay. Well, gay or not, whether that was intended or not, let's just discuss who they are. They represent, Elphaba's the spirit on this shoulder, Glinda's the spirit on this shoulder. They're in the same body. They are one. They're a pair through the whole movie. And this is really the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. So, and they are both females because the spirit is considered the female on earth. But from heaven, it's the opposite for this side. This is the true male, the one operating in God's spirit is the true male, represented by Hava. The true female is the one that is operating in the serpent spirit. And so there's a lot of enmity. The first song they sing is how much they loathe each other. And when Glinda in the movie is asked by Madame, the character playing the sorcerer, she asks her to make some space in her room so that she'll have a place to live. And she makes this itty-bitty space for her. And isn't that what this one does for this one when we're first born? There's just an itty-bitty space in there for God's Spirit. And his voice is the quiet, gentle spirit that we have to really listen hard to hear. And we have our youth where we're supposed to learn how God said to do it so that we can hear this voice. Otherwise, we're following this voice and we look like Glinda. Galinda, who becomes Glinda. She takes the hay out of her name. And so back to the broom and the dust, you know, in the movie when she creates that broom and she jumps out the window at the end to try to get away from the flying monkeys. At first she falls. It's not until she looks at the broom, which turns into herself as a child, and then it jumps up under her and she starts to be able to fly. Should remind you the scripture, come to me as a child and I'll give you rest. Children believe in the good and all, but they break the rules. And so I believe that that was symbolic of that. And you know, we're all, I mean, Jacob is Israel's name when he is still wrestling with his fleshly nature. He doesn't become Israel till he overcomes it. And Jacob and Israel are Hava. Adam is Esau, because anybody that's still like Adam, they haven't overcome their fleshly nature. They are consuming and devouring each other. And what I'm doing is I'm separating the wheat and the tares again through this movie, and I'm showing how it's being portrayed in the movie. Okay, so now I'm going to go over some of the parts of the movie. Well, let me go back when I said that the broom brush away the dust, and just remember that in the New Testament we're told to preach the message, and if it's not received, to leave and shake the dust off your feet. Dust meaning the atoms. Adam is of the dust. Those who don't receive it, those of the fleshly nature. And who's under our feet? The enemy. So all of these things are pointing us to how to live his way. I'm giving it to you in a creative way through a creative movie. And I'm hoping that you're not just receiving it, but in awe of it, because I am certainly in awe of it, and even more in awe that I was chosen to give it to you. So thank you for letting me be the one to speak it to you. I'm going to go over parts of the movie, not necessarily in the right order, like I already told you, part of the end. But there's a class scene where the goat teacher, Dr. Dillman, he's trying to say Galinda's name, and he says he has a lack of teeth and he can't pronounce her name. Well, the lack of teeth also implies that he's not being able to eat. A call to consume and devour his neighbor and maker. So he again is the animal that's like Hava. He may be breaking rules, but he's walking in love, the highest of the rules, the parentheses. Now, let me see. In this movie, the animal culture is literally being cast out and not being allowed to speak, not being allowed to participate. And again, the animals are representing our animalistic nature. I believe in the movie it's representing those of us who are being cast out for breaking rules. And I'm going to give you an example like this teacher. And I saw it just after I was breaking this down the other day. And there was an article, I watched the video of a teacher. She decided that she was going to have a sex change, but she asked the principal if she could do so before she did it because she didn't want to lose her job. They told her yes, she did it. And because a parent screamed and hollered about somebody that had a sex change teaching their kids, she was fired. This is a prime example of this scenario right here in this movie. That's exactly what it's talking about. Somebody having a sex change is nobody's business. Because guess what? We're allowed to love ourselves too. And the flesh is not perfect. I don't care what anybody says. If it was perfect, it wouldn't start dying and decaying the minute that we're born. If we're born without a limb, we try to put a limb on it. If we're born with our lips being a cleft lip, we fix it at birth. Well, guess what? We also are able to fix the sex of our body, our flesh, to match what's on the inside. It's not about whether... the wrongdoing is not whether we feel male or female. We're both. We are all both. And it just so happens some of us may have the body that represents the opposite part of how we feel. That is not biblically correct to say that somebody is going to suffer the second judgment if they do that. The first judgment, all flesh got death for anything that we do in the physical. That's a physical thing. We are allowed to love ourselves, and again, that requires for us to break the lesser rules to do so. And I don't know about you, but for me, I want to be who I really am. I don't want to have to pretend that I'm somebody or something I'm not. It's just like I really was called to give this word and to break this stuff down. And I've had to hide it, and I've been told to shut up about it because I'm a woman, because I'm out of place, or whatever the reason may be. But I beg to differ. If I know the information and God's the one that gave it to me, that means that I'm supposed to give it. And I'm not going to be comfortable in my skin until I'm doing what I was created to do. God created these people the way they are. He knew what choices they were going to make to live their life. The real test is not what they do, it's how we around them respond. Are we going to love them? Love covers a multitude of sins, says the word. As long as no one's being hurt, it's nobody's business. The only time that we're supposed to step in and not to judge but to keep people safe is when someone else is being harmed in the process of somebody's choice. And we need to be grown-ups and know the difference. And we need to stop this harassment of people because they're choosing a certain thing to live their life. We are not living their lives. Nobody's living my life, and I'm not living anyone else's life. So we need to butt out and give it to God, because everybody is God's creation. And God's heaven includes a lot of people that look totally different from each other, which is what makes it something other than boring. We're not supposed to be bricks. We're supposed to be stone. What's the difference? Stone has many shapes, sizes, and colors. It's made of the same substance on the inside. Father and Son. That's the Hebrew word for stone. Abba and Ben. And I'm trying to give you as many ways as I can to explain this. And I am trying to be tender and gentle because it's new for some people. But hey, there comes a time when there's no more tenderness and gentleness left. If you don't get it and you don't get it and you don't get it and you keep persecuting God's children, those who walk in love, eventually it's not going to be pleasant or tender or soft anymore. It's going to be quite harsh for those who are not getting it. So with that being said, let me move on here. Oh, yes. Let me go back a page. So in one of the classes, after he's explained that he doesn't have any teeth, he says that he's the last animal professor because of the rejection of the animal culture. And again, I explained that through the example of the woman who was a man, became a woman, and then fired after she asked before she did it. Because again, there's those who don't like the animal culture. Because, of course, we're considered animals because we don't fit into the physical mold. We're the spiritual. The spiritual's the truth. The physical is half-truths. And what is a half-truth? It's a lie. Why is faith believing in what you don't see? Because believing in what you do see is not faith. It's not the truth either. So when we see someone that has sex change and we think they're evil, that's not the truth. That's a lie from the enemy. And we need to remember that, because we're persecuting and we're firing people that are good people, that are God's children. And it has to stop. He says that it changed with a great drought, meaning no water that quenches thirst. Food grew scarce. No more grace, which has been the error for quite some time since the Messianic movement, because we went back to the rules and regulations which give you a knowledge of good and evil. And that's the Peshat level of the Tanakh. That doesn't mean that the underlying layers are of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. They're hidden. Just like Hava, the tree of life, was hidden in Adam until she was pulled out. It's the same scenario. This is the Adam, the tree of knowledge. The tree of life is hidden and can't be seen within me. Not until we are shown what the Spirit looks like, and we should know by now. It looks like love. And love comes in many shapes, sizes, cultures, colors. I mean, oh my gosh, there's so many ways to say it, but it's just not hard. It's not hard for those who love. It's not hard for me to look at someone, no matter who it is, and just bask in the majesty of God's creation. And I don't understand how it's hard for anybody, but I'm trying to understand now. Every time I've asked God or told God I didn't understand something, he let me walk in those shoes. So now I'm very careful about what I say. It's like, look, God, I don't understand, but I don't want to. I'll let you understand. I'm giving it to you. I'm not going to judge it. I've learned my lesson the hard way because I have had to walk in the shoes of people that did what I didn't like and didn't understand and judged. And God said, well, let me show you, Shannon. And then I walked that walk and I thought, oh, okay, I get it. I won't point a finger at that again. This is how you learn these lessons, guys. There's no easy way to learn it. Okay, so he says food grew scarce, which I believe is no more grace given. He said people grew hungry. And when this happens, and then Elphaba said, people look for someone to blame, like Adam. It was this woman you gave me. Glenda asks, why are we bringing up the past? And the goat says, we cannot escape the past, which helps us understand the present. Adam and Eve. That's why I keep going over it and over it and over it, because this is the wheat and the tares. If we do not understand what is really good and what is really evil, nothing will ever change. That's the whole purpose of going over this and over this and over this and explaining it. And I chose to explain it this way because in the way I'm explaining it, we understand it in true life terms that we go through on every day right now in this day and time. Okay, let me look. I'm looking to see what I've talked about. So someone wrote on his board when he went to teach at this class time, and it said that animals should be seen and not heard. Now, women and children have been told this many a times by the men. Black people were told this. They were told they shouldn't even be seen. I mean, this kind of stuff has gone on since the beginning of time. I mean, in the caveman days, women were dragged around by their hair. So, I mean, we've come a long ways, guys. Let's not think that we're as evil as we think we are, because we're not. God changed the ratio of good to evil with the flood and Noah. The ratio started out, there were 6 generations of Adam, and then the 7th was Enoch. And in that math problem, he shows you that Enoch was different because he was a real father. It says the first 6 generations had children and they died. But Enoch, he was no more at 365. He was 65 when he had his first child, and he walked with God for 300 years. What else did he do for 300 years? He was a father. Only he was the father that put his child first. He laid his life down for that child. The first 6 generations did not. So that's your ratio of 6 to 1, making 7. Well, in the ark, in Noah's ark, it's the opposite. Only there's 2 that equal 1. Ham and his wife equal 1. The other 6 were actually believers. Ham and his wife were the ones that created the unbelievers in the boat. So the ratio has changed. There's more people on the earth that love than not. But our eyes haven't been trained to see them. I'm trying to train the eyes for everybody to see who those people are. Those who walk in love. What does love do? It lays its life down. And the other part, the respect part that a woman's supposed to do to the husband, that the spirit's supposed to do for the flesh, is to take the blame. Flesh can't do anything without the spirit in it. But the enemy spirit is not going to take the blame. It's going to blame the flesh and God. So let me see where I am here, because I like to read what I've got written, and I like to talk about it and do a little bit of both. So animals should not be seen or should be seen and not heard. Women and children were told this, and this is also one of the themes in The Little Mermaid, the Princess in Aladdin, and Cinderella. Some of the other movies I've gone over. If you catch this one first, go back and watch some of my other videos. It's the same thing. It's a repeated pattern. I'm pulling it out to show you. Because I explained in my first video, I'm a seer. I can see underneath. I can explain these things. And I'm trying to get better to make it more clear for those having a hard time understanding it. So I mentioned the song Glenda and Elphaba are singing that they loathe each other. Well, that's the enmity within each one of us, between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. And so in the movie, they become friends, but only because one is wanting the power that the other has. And the friendship it's lopsided only because one has Hava's eyes. She's going to look at the others as though they're good, because we usually look at people the way we are. That's what it means. The eyes are the windows of the soul. Not looking into someone's eyes, but what's looking out of the eyes. I'm looking out of my eyes. If I'm good, and I am, and I walk in love, and I do, then that's how I'm going to see others, and that's how you can be fooled. That's why we have to teach our children not to talk to strangers. Because children usually think that everybody's good, unless they happen to be a child that's got something to hide or isn't so good. And there is one occasionally, but not normally. So I talked about the symbology of the little space that Glenda gave Elphaba in her room. Now, Madame, the sorcerer, she's looking for someone who has the real power, so that she and the wizard can get them to read the book like I talked about, to do the spell on the monkeys, so they can get the power and the control and the money, stay wealthy, and have what they want. So Madame is trying to help Elphaba learn to control her power by controlling her emotions. Now, listen, that's kind of what God does with those who are not his children against those who are his children. You know, we come in weak and deceived like Hava. But once you have been provoked and you've had enough of that and you get angry and you're the one that has the real power, you can't use your power until you get control of those emotions and your anger and all of those things. Then you can use your power. In the beginning, Hava gave her power away to the flesh. And it's not until those many lessons that are learned that the power is regained and controlled. When the flesh is tired and can't keep going, the spirit can go and go and go like the energy bunny. And it's a matter of what flesh is going to choose what spirit. So the prince is a picture of that. At first, well, he meets Elphaba first. He likes her, and he's not like everybody else. He's not seeing her green in a bad way. You know, he basically says, well, I thought you blended with the foliage. And he was being a little fun and sarcastic, but because she had been through so much, she was being defensive and didn't realize at that time that he was different. So then he goes on to meet Glenda, and Glenda catches his eye at first because she's looking the part. It looked good to the eyes and then for food, and she's doing everything she can to present herself as good through the whole movie. Well then, in the middle of the movie, the prince always liked Elphaba, but later he gets to know her better, and he starts thinking for himself. And Glenda mentions that when he seems distant from her, and I'm getting ahead of myself, so let me read here for a minute, so that I don't get ahead of myself. Oh, when Madame is trying to teach Elphaba about controlling her power by controlling her emotions, she explains that no one should be scorned or laughed at, looked down upon, or told to stop jabbering or be quiet. Keep quiet. And how often are we told this? I know I've been told that my whole life. Oh, now's not the time. We don't have time for you to talk about that today. And on, or just laughed at. Oh, you're polluting God's word. You're changing it all around. No, I'm repeating exactly what is written. And I'm explaining it quite well, only because of the Father that gave it to me. Let's go on. The animals are being blamed for what is going wrong, and they're being told to keep quiet. Now, what do we do in society today? We're looking around at people who cross-dress or decide to have sex changes or want abortions or whatever it may be. And I'm not saying that I'm for abortion. That's a touchier subject because it is hurting somebody. And so I'm not going to get in there. I will say this. I'm pro-life, but I'm also pro-choice because God was pro-choice first. He gave us a choice between the tree of knowledge of good and evil or the tree of life. He was pro-choice. He wasn't going to force anybody to do it right. There are lessons to be learned with that, but it's also, I play the what if question with that very subject. What if the soul, because I believe in reincarnation, I believe that we're born more than once until we learn all the lessons that we're supposed to. The man that was here to live once and then die is our flesh. Shannon Nace will not ever be back, but the soul in Shannon, I believe, will be, if that's what God decides. So, with that being said, I forgot where I was going with that. Oh, abortion. So I do the what if question. What if that soul that got aborted wasn't supposed to live in the first place? So the act of somebody doing that and making that choice actually fulfilled God's wish for that soul not to live again. What if somebody wanted a better resurrection? They died their last life not so well, hurting a lot of innocent people. So they choose to be born through a body that they know is going to abort them for better resurrection. I mean, these are what-if questions. These are opinions. I'm not stating this as fact. This is where my mind goes to rationalize what is going on, because there's a purpose for everything, and God says that everything will work out for the good of those who love Him, even abortion. So there are plenty of people that have made that mistake. Maybe it wasn't a mistake. I don't know. It is not for me to say. I'm not the judge. I will not set myself up in this temple claiming to be God and point my finger at someone over that. So, some things are best left up to God and for us to be quiet about, because unless you want to walk in those shoes, which I did walk in those shoes, and I chose to have that child. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't take some risks to see if I could lose it naturally. Played basketball for 6 months of my second pregnancy. I was freaking out. I didn't know what I was going to do. I tried really hard with my life trying not to have another child out of wedlock. So, we are nobody to make judgments on anyone. So, where was I? I could go on a tangent for stuff like that for a good hour or two. I mean, I'm really adamant about letting people be people. Humans are not perfect. They are going to make mistakes forever. That is, humans keeping the physical law is not what God says is perfect. We can be perfect the other way, by perfectly covering others so that we can be perfectly covered. That is what perfection is according to God. We were put here to make mistakes. And I'm going to give you an example. I didn't write this down, so I'll have to look at it again. But let's talk about the story of David, Uriah, and Bathsheba. The New Testament talks about when we're born, we're already sinners. So this story kind of hits that, the soul level interpretation. So I've broken this story down in the Remez before, where Uriah represents Jesus. His name means light of God. David is playing the part of God, not God the Father, but the God of the earth, the serpent. Bathsheba is us, the wife of Jesus, Uriah, who's not at home with her. And in the story, Uriah tells David that he's not going to go home to her until he starts to live, but living means dying. Choose death in order to give and have life. But David's not doing that. He's chosen to become one with another man's wife. Well, so that's something that the serpent would do. Now, Bathsheba, we are just a female. We can't say no to what he wants. He's the king. And she doesn't even realize he's looking at her naked. And that nakedness is not talking about physical. She's naked in that she has no covering. And like kind likes like kind. David is naked. He's uncovered. So he sends for her, and basically it's a situation of rape. And what is her mikvah? To forgive him. So when we're born and we're considered already misfits, we're already one with the enemy, we've been raped. That's spiritual rape. That is the rape in the story of Tamar and her brother. That's what that is referring to. It's not the literal. And of course, I'll get into that much deeper later. So, there's the two husbands, David and Uriah. The one husband is the husband of flesh. The other husband is the husband of spirit. But there's really only one husband, and the husband is the one that lays his life down for the wife. Uriah died for the wife. But in that story, now David has to take her and marry her, but under the inheritance of the one who died. So the serpent, the brother of Jesus, the spirit, and there are two spirits. The serpent was sent to earth first. He's the older brother. Jesus comes to earth the second, in flesh. Okay? So, again, once he dies, he is the guilt offering for those who were clean that became unclean to become clean again at the appointed time. That would be Hava. She was clean. She becomes unclean. His death is the sacrifice to make her clean again. He's sacrificed in the physical because it was the first Adam. Jesus is the second. He comes to fulfill his punishment in the flesh to reconcile God back to his people, those like Hava. Now, I know this is difficult. It's not difficult for me because I've been doing this for 15 years or more. I just haven't been able to find somebody that could understand what I was saying as of yet. And it's been pretty painful. At any rate, I understand what I'm saying, and I'm so hoping that at least one person gets it. I'm thinking one of my Jewish brothers or sisters will get it. I'm just not sure who, but I know somebody will. So, where was I in this movie? And Jesus' death, when he died, he was considered the firstborn of the enemy. And he portrays that because isn't a husband supposed to be with his wife? Yes. But he came for the lost. The lost are not going to be his wife. It's going to be the opposite spirit. So he's spending time with the actual children of the enemy. David's playing that enemy part. So that is how he brings together God's people again. Through his death, the reign of the house of Judah is restored, but it's Israel. Because his spirit was Israel. His flesh was Judah. Since he's the one that laid his life down as one from the house of Judah, it's going to go to those who have his spirit, Israel, the secondborn. Hava, the secondborn. Okay, let me see where I hope that I didn't, beat that with a stick. I hope somebody's getting that. Please let me know in the comments that you are receiving what I'm saying. Let's see. Okay. Oh, the goat teacher says that if you make it disturbing enough, you can make anyone keep quiet. We know this is true. You know how hard it's been for me to try to speak about this stuff? I've had this lesson planned for this movie for a month. Now, I've worked on it to make sure I haven't missed anything, but I have had major anxiety about presenting it. Because I still don't know if anybody's getting the information, and it's a lot of work. What I'm doing is a lot of work, but I believe that I was called to do it to share it with anybody that will get it. So here I am. There's a scene where the goat teacher is taken out and Elphaba is very upset. And she asks if anybody's going to speak up. And, I'm asking, is anybody going to speak up for that lady that was fired after she was told that she could do what she did? Is anybody going to speak up for her? She's still equipped to teach her students. She didn't do anything wrong. But it's being held against her because of somebody that set themselves up in the temple claiming to be God. That's basically what's happened. So she gets angry. And she slams the flowers on the table, and everyone goes to sleep except Elphaba and the prince, indicating that they are the only two that are spiritually awake. Now, the prince didn't know this. He doesn't understand why it didn't affect him, but that's because he's Jacob trying to become Israel. The new teacher had brought in a cub caged, and the teacher explaining if the animals are caged young enough, they would never learn to speak up. Isn't that what we're doing with our children? Don't we do that with our children who are wanting to dress like a girl when they're a boy? And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. I do think that children need to be wait till they're grown, just like they have to wait till they're grown to drink. They have to wait until a certain age to drive, because our taste buds change. We learn things, we experience things, and we change our mind. And so I do think there's an age limit, because we might be allowing somebody to do something that they'll regret later. And if we'd have just made them wait a little bit, they might have decided not to do it from the beginning. And there's no right or wrong. I don't believe. I believe this is our car. We decorate our cars, and it represents part of who we are, but not our complete soul. It does not. It's for our identity in this life, and we're here to, some of us are here to rebel to make changes. And I do believe that's what's happening now. First, it was rebelling on the color thing. Nobody should have to suffer for being the color they are. It's ridiculous. We are all God's children. That's like a mother who has 5 or 6 children, and they're fighting amongst each other, trying to kill each other. What in the world? It's a gimme. If you have any brain, it's a no-brainer. That's not even an opinion. It's just a fact. So the prince joins Elphaba in rescuing the cub, and the scene begins to show the prince's heart. Elphaba leads the animals to the water. Isn't that what Jesus did? He led those of us that are animals outside before we became, not so animalistic, to the water. To teach us how to walk in love. That's the whole message of this movie. Walk in love. Does not matter how you look. It's the food that matters. My food is to do the will of the Father. The will of the Father is to lay my life down so that I can pick it back up again. That's why he loves me. Elphaba, when she was a child, and she was the one that was taking the blame for her little sister all of the time when people were making joints and jokes and making fun of them and bullying them and making Nessa cry. Elphaba took the blame by the father, and the bear that raised her kindly and took pleasure in who she was told her that it was not her fault and it wasn't right for the father to blame her. We all go through that. I've been blamed for so many things, it's ridiculous. You know that story of Job where everybody turns his back on him? Yeah, I've experienced that. My entire family. They all think I'm crazy. It's okay. I am. But it's a good crazy, and I'm not going to change that. I'm here to be who I am. And some of them want to be who they are. So, if that's what we want, we need to be allowing others to be that too. The prince fell for Glinda first because she looked as though she was good. Later, after he rescues the cub with Elphaba, he notices the difference between the two, and according to Glinda, he is different because he started thinking. That's what we're supposed to do in this flesh of a body. We are not supposed to listen to the voice of the flesh. We're supposed to start thinking and listening to the voice of the Father, and the only way we can do that is if we know what the Father is going to want, and we know that through looking through his book that he wrote through his creation in some form or another. The rules and regulations are grace. The whole book goes together. You just have to have eyes to see and ears to hear it. You have to have the right heart. If you're focused on the physical, you are not looking at the truth. The truth is hidden in the spiritual. Okay, so I'm going to try to get through the rest of this quickly. I hope I don't forget anything. I'm almost to the end. There's a scene where it gets back to Glinda in the room, and her friends are there in the room preparing for this dance that, of course, the prince coerces everybody to go to, even though they're not supposed to. And while they're there, they find Glinda's grandmother's hat, the witch hat. And Glinda says that it's ugly, but she didn't hate anybody enough to give it to. But then she gives it to Elphaba. Why? So that she can look as though she's evil. It comes from her bloodline, the bloodline of the physical, not the spiritual. Okay, she says, wait. Then she decides to give it to Elphaba because it matches her clothes, because Elphaba wears black. She then invites her to the dance. Now, Elphaba accepts, assuming that she's doing it out of the kindness of her heart with good intent. So before attending the dance, she goes to see Madame, and she tells her unless she invites Glinda to the sorcerer class, she will not attend. And so Madame gives her a magic wand before the dance. Now, through the whole movie, Glinda wants to be a sorcerer, but the Madame does not see anything in her that's going to be powerful. She doesn't see that she has any kind of power, so she doesn't want to deal with her. So it's Elphaba that says, no, you're going to include her in the class. Because she's trying to be friends with her. That's what friends do. They include, they don't exclude. Which Elphaba's been excluded through the whole movie pretty much because she's green and she looks funny and she's weird. So she helps her become popular. The same as what we do to conform for acceptance. And Elphaba does let her kind of beautify her back in the room after the dance. And I would equate that to us being persuaded to do things the way someone else says is normal. Now there's normal and then there's abnormal that's not good. There's good and bad in each thing that we can be. But, you know, when you are compelled, you have a parent that might be a doctor or a singer or whatever, and you don't follow in their footsteps and you go after your own, and they want you to conform to what they want to do for you to be popular, whatever, even in school, you know, wearing Nike because you want the brands and you want to be popular. That's pretty much what's going on here. So Elphaba is trying to conform and become like Glinda, which is the word eating. She's becoming one, consummating. Okay, so, and I mean, it can be good and bad. It depends on how you do it. So they end up singing a song, Glinda does, where she's teaching her how to be popular. But before that song, Glinda wants to exchange secrets, and then she says, you know, the prince will be married. She and the prince will be married, even though he doesn't know yet. She wants to know why Elphaba sleeps with the green bottle under her pillow, and Elphaba says that it was her mother's. Glinda doesn't like her secret. Elphaba then tells her that her dad hates her, and he has good reason. And that's when she says it's her fault that her sister can't walk, and then the whole scenario about the milk flowers, and I already went over that. And Glinda basically tells Elphaba that it wasn't her fault, that it was the milk flowers, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And I mean, that may or may not be true, but guess what? Adam plays the part of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but we know flesh is not the problem. It's the spirit in the flesh. And, you know, when Hava was taken out of Adam, Eve was taken out of Adam, the enemy seed was sown within Adam. It says that God put him to sleep. It doesn't say he woke him up. We know we got lots of people that are awake and living, but they're dead. They're asleep. And that's pretty much what that's talking about. Um, the prince sees Elphaba and says she's been Glendified and doesn't need to do that. He sees her and she's gotten her style going and flipping her hair so she can be popular, and he tells her she doesn't need all that because he sees her soul. It's not about the outside. I mean, we all want to look good. I want to look good. I hate getting old. I don't want the wrinkles. Who does? But the point is, and you know, it's a human thing to worry about that, but we have a soul that's beautiful and youthful if we allow it. And that can actually influence how young or old that we look on the outside. So then we get to where Elphaba is invited to the wizard to the Emerald City. And I already talked about what went down there, and it ends with her singing the song Defying Gravity, and I already went through that part. There is going to be a second Wicked, okay? And I do plan to go over that movie to kind of, and I'll recap this one or repost this one before I do that one. I don't know how long it's going to be before that's out. But I'm hoping that you're getting the animalistic nature of two kinds of people, Adam and Eve, and the actors who are playing those parts. And the prince is the one that's kind of like a picture of Yeshua, one and then the other, Jacob and then Israel, because any flesh that comes here, we have to fight off the fleshly nature. The question is, are we going to overcome it, or are we going to become like it? Esau became like it. Jacob overcame it and became Israel. So I'm hoping that you're following me. I don't have anything else to talk about except that this is what is mean by we're calling good evil and evil good. You know how long that we have called people evil for taking up for it and defending those who have gone through the sex changes, they're gay or have had abortions or whatever. And there's other people who claim to be God's people who are persecuting those people rather than keeping the parentheses, the law of love. You cannot be pardoned for your things, even if you did one itty-bitty thing. God is going to see it if you're seeing everybody else's, because we get what we give. So with that being said, I hope that you have been blessed with this information. I hope I didn't leave anything out. If I did, I'll come back with a short little video. But other than that, I hope that you guys have a blessed evening. Thank you and goodbye.